All right. Since we have been already talking, but welcome again. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We're spread all across the continents. I know where everyone, or I don't know where everyone is, but I know we're spread. And given the time constraint, we will get right onto it. Jimbo is going to conduct a session with Amrish and Munish. We are very fortunate to have our classmates, batchmates, who have had distinguished career in civil services to talk to us about their careers, their current frontline work, and what to expect, what we're calling COVID-19 and beyond. Also, just to be mindful of their sensitive positions, I would stay away from any type of political discussion, and this session is being recorded. After this, we will have updates from our volunteers who've been leading various tracks, fundraising, database, etc. Now, those are, many of them have spent hours, they have day jobs. So I wanted to thank them at the outset for taking the time out to do this. And before I hand it over to Jimbo, I did want to mention that our hearts go out to those of our batchmates and many others who have lost their near and dear ones. I know of at least 4 or 5 of our batchmates who have their parents in critical conditions. So I just wanted to be aware of that background. I wish them a speedy recovery. I'm sure all of us wish them speedy recovery. Also, I think several of us are involved in many direct or indirect efforts in terms of sending the aid to India. And I know I speak for all that the country gave us a lot in terms of a world-class education when it didn't have much to give at all. And we are ever thankful for that. And I'm sure all of us are doing and will do whatever it needs to be done to help the country in their need of our. So with that, Jimbo, I'm handing it over to you. Take it away.
Hello, my name is James, popularly known as Jimbo, H8 MEC. The theme today is serving the nation. As Mahatma Gandhi said, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. We have 2 of our IIT Bombay alumni who graduated in '96 and have dedicated their career in service to the country we all love. Let me first start with Munish. Manish Madgil is the secretary in the Department of Administrative Reforms, Karnataka, and was the head of Karnataka State COVID War Room from March last year to March this year. His team implemented technology-based contact tracing, home quarantine, testing, and patient management. In his prior role as a commissioner of survey, he brought land records and maps on mobile. The app Dishang had more than 1 million downloads. As the head of citizen service delivery, he led the creation of income and residence certificate repositories for all 6 crore plus citizens, which can be printed anytime and anywhere. This effort won the National E-Governance Award in 2019-20. Earlier, as the head of corporate loan waiver scheme implementation, Munish facilitated the payment of 15,000 crores paid to 25 lakh farmers in record time through end-to-end IT system and saved about 10,000 crores through use of IT. He is married to Rupa Maudgil, an IPS officer. They have 2 children. Ambarish is our batch, computer science, hostel 8. After a brief IT career, Ambarish joined the IAS in 2004 and has worked as a district magistrate in Jaisalmer, Junjunu, Sriganganagar in Rajasthan, as well as a director at the Department of Agriculture, Department of IT, and last as the chairman and managing director of Rajasthan Small Industries Corporation. He has volunteered with the Isha Foundation since 2009 and set up Isha Life, a wellness center in Chennai. He is currently the project director of Isha Outreach while on leave from IAS. Some of us will remember that Ambarish was secretary of Wildlife Club at IIT Bombay and organized several camps all over India. I myself went to 2 of them. In 1999, he took a year off and traveled around India, visiting people involved in alternate models of development, environmentalists, and artists. He's married to the Drupad singer, Sunita Amin. They have a son. We've asked each of them to speak for 10 minutes and the rest will be a Q&A. If you haven't emailed your questions earlier, please send the questions in the chat window. I'll first start with Manish. Manish, COVID is in everyone's mind. For many of us, this fight is very personal. all of us are moved by the magnitude of the crisis. You were at the forefront of this fight in Karnataka. Tell us more about the team, what your team has done, and then what are they doing?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, everybody. It's indeed absolute pleasure to be able to speak to all of you. Recently, we finished, I'm 91 batch, 5-year integrated MTech. So I passed out with you guys, but I joined with the previous batch. We had our 25 years last year, December just now. It's extreme pleasure and a great opportunity to connect to your batch and to connect to you guys also. And coming back to Jimbo's question, see, basically we all know anything I say virtually will be a cliche. The fact of the matter is that, COVID is going to change the way of life in a lot of ways. It has already changed. We want, we believe some part of it will have a much longer, impact on our lives than, we wish it to have. Handling of COVID, what I've seen is that, the kind of multidimensionality it has. I'm sorry, some cliches will be there. Every person matters. What I found, every positive action matters. All of you guys, being mathematically very, endowed, I can throw some technical things. Basically, it's an exponential thing. That's again a cliche. What happens is the exponential loss or benefit matters both ways. Okay, it's like every bit of effort I can personally share with you, you know, even the smallest of effort counts, because it counts. If that effort didn't happen, the curve would be much, much bigger than otherwise it would be, because if this effort was not there. So one of the lectures I heard from one of the disaster management experts from Kerala, who has handled long disasters, including the previous, outbreak of disease there before COVID. The preventive side of pandemic or this kind of a disaster management never ceases. One thing I would like you to understand is and share is, even when we have now, lakhs of cases every day are reporting in India, and to be very frank, one of the lessons I learned, which most of us tend to forget, even within the government, I would say, the preventive side of COVID management cannot be left at any point of time. Even at the peak of highest number of cases which we are now seeing, and I hope this is the peak. And even in this, the preventive side is extremely and extremely important. What I would like to say is that in that, the effort of each one of you, all of you are a knowledge bank, because all of you are intelligent people. You will influence a lot of thought processes of people around you. The individual person's behavior is going to be the defining way of preventing this disease. So please spread this message to be very, very preventive. Keep always the prevention side up. Even within the government, I've seen many officers think now, okay, now it's a community spread. There is no point of, focusing on preventive side. What are the preventive side? That's again a cliche, but I'll still say. Like isolating a person who would be COVID positive, one very simple thing, but it is not practically as effectively happening as it's supposed to be happening. And that, I believe, is the core reason, one of the core reasons for the high spread today. Second, isolating the people who are the contacts and likely to be COVID positive. These two simple things aren't happening properly. And that's exactly why number of cases are exploding all over the place. I'll give you an example. Before I come to what we did, imagine today what is happening is some things have changed. The medical fraternity is stepping up and trying to help everybody. What has happened, to some extent, the fear of COVID has come down, but unfortunately, it has led to, people slightly being more casual about it, if I use that word. It is inevitable also. I've seen with my own eyes in this wave, people carrying their, COVID positive family member, even when they're mild and asymptomatic or very less symptomatic, going from one place to the other, getting their tests done, getting their hospital admission tried. In the process, the spread is more. Even though what I'm trying to say is that we have to understand this way, that person who is COVID infected, almost 90% of them can stay at home and get all right. And that panic thing, if it reduces, it will be very, very useful. What we did, like if I would share what we did in the part of the state war room, and we are still doing, we tried doing this preventive side on the contact tracing, on the quarantine management, the logistics. It's extremely difficult to cover all those things. The supply chain management. In the beginning, things were last wave when it came, we were learning and trying to do it. This time we have more experience. However, the numbers are absolutely overwhelming. Everybody's effort matters. Don't think that if you are making a small effort, it does not matter. It absolutely makes a huge difference. Everybody is, even you're spreading this knowledge that if you're COVID positive, if you're mild or asymptomatic, do not roam around. Be at home, watch your pulse oximeter reading. If it drops below 92, then you need to be bothered about going to for an admission. Hospitals I am seeing are admitting people left, right, and center. Even those who don't need to be admitted are getting admitted. A 35-year-old person I saw getting admitted, even though his pulse oxygen saturation was 97, and so on and so forth. So there's a panic. There is a real situation also. I would say all your sanity we need to bring forth and share with everybody. And there's a large amount I can talk. I would rather have it that, if the questions are posed, I'll answer them more specifically. Given the paucity of time, this is what I can pitch in at this point of time. Thank you.
So there's a question that came from Sridhar. It's about the recovery. So how is the government looking at the COVID aftermath? Is this something that is an event which has a long-term effect? If so, is the recovery plan also in the same way? So it's not just the lives that are lost, but also the livelihoods. And how is the government partnering with the NGOs, or how are we going about effectively delivering this long-term recovery?
I'll be very frank. See, the government is in crisis management mode, frankly. To say that the government has a very well thought out plan how to handle the long-term implications will not be true. What I would say is that government believes, firstly, I would say the thought of process in the government now is to be ready for a third wave. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Having missed readiness, to be in readiness for second wave, we can't make that blunder. And that is an immediate requirement. Second thing is, do the vaccination. We achieve the vaccination. There also we have, not achieved what we would have wanted to have achieved by this point of time or coming 2-3 months. So if you have vaccination, the short-term and medium-term plans would be to have the vaccination, have the preparedness for a possible third wave, and try to, as I'm finding it's going to be difficult, even within the government, this thought process isn't very crystallized, that the behavioral change has to continue for the next year or two, if not more, okay? That part, if the government plans out and is able to communicate to people or enforce, I don't know how, that will be a thing. And as far as revival of livelihoods is concerned, the government thinking is to somehow minimize the lockdown, open as early as possible. And, it's not that it is having, allow more money, from the government or central government, there is stimulation and all that stimulus packages. But I'll not say there is a very, very well thought out concrete plan about it. The problem about coordinating with NGOs and all, I can tell you is that it's extremely, I'll put it in this way, why is it difficult for government or people to be able to work with government? Imagine, it's maybe a bad simile. Imagine your grandmother who is used to dealing with old things, she's cooking things at home. People suddenly turn up with, automatic utensil washer and automated things. This grandmother cannot make use of many of these things, which a lot of people bring up. So that bridging of the way government actually functions and way the solutions are available, the way an NGO would like to function with the people and the way the government would want to function. That bridging, like people like Amrish are doing a wonderful job. A lot of that bridging kind of a thing would be needed for an NGO or the civil society, to be able to function along with government. It's not easy at all. So going forward, it will be a good idea if we can actually find a method to do it. One rule of law I can tell you is anybody who wants to work with the government, anybody, he should be mentally ready to work with the government for next 5 years. Any of you who wants to work for 2-3 months or 6 months and go away, you're not going to be happy. You will be totally frustrated. Government is a very slow machine. You have to virtually devote half a decade, I would say, to be having that partnership productive, at least 2 to 3 years. So if this message is communicated, you come ready with everything, you think you will coordinate with government, things will happen, it's not going to happen. Most of the times it requires about 2-3 years, I would say, of a partnership with anybody or longer. I don't know if I could answer the question.
Yeah. I think that you answered it well. Before I go to Ambrish, I wanted to ask, how can the IIT community help in terms of formulating a better response plans for future events, maybe the third wave? Other than the monetary help, what kind of policy expertise or operational expertise you could get help from us, people like us, who are not necessarily just in India, but also outside?
One thing is, in your own family and your larger family and neighborhood, if you can communicate after having a clarity how to at your own personal level handle response to pandemic, that will be extremely useful. And I keep on saying that in every organization or any setup, there is somebody called a knowledge worker or a knowledge person who has an undue influence. I believe a lot of IITians would have a huge influence on the environment they live in. If you can spread this knowledge, information of pandemic handling, it will be an extremely valuable thing. And Ambrish, may I be able to add something? Ambrish, would you add something? How can IITians be more useful?
Thank you, Manish. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Can hear you. Okay. So one thing which I want everybody to appreciate is the difference in scale. When we compare India with other nations, India is this, the only comparable nation is US. European nations are smaller than a state of India. And China is not an open country. You don't know what the hell goes on there. And no other country compares in terms of size and variety of people and, the kind of polity we have, where every state actually pretty much, when it comes to things which impact people's day-to-day lives, which includes managing of pandemic and the health situation, it's all being managed by each individual state. The central government only has an enabling role. Central government is not there doing it on a day-to-day basis, and nor can they direct. That's not the structure of how India works. So nobody else has this level of population and this level of complexity to deal with. Nowhere else in the world. So that is the first thing to appreciate, that what we have in India is much bigger than anybody else anywhere else. Now, when we say that, how do we handle the third wave better? See, essentially, in large systems, it is the system design which delivers. So what, like when we say that some of these experiences are personal, what we are trying to say is, I as an individual, my uncle or my mama or my grandfather, I took him to a hospital and this was my experience. Or I'm trying to find some medicine or oxygen, this is my experience. So what you are seeing is, there is a whole black box system of delivering oxygen or a whole black box system of delivering medicine, and you are just seeing the net result of it. Now, how do you make that system more efficient? That I will agree with Manish. Yes, if IITians want to work on it, any of you guys are willing to jump in, please, you can work on making any of those aspects of India's healthcare system more efficient and more well designed. But it will take some time. It's not going to happen in 6 months or 3 months. So, and each state has its own system. What I'm told is that Tamil's public healthcare system is better than most other states. Some variety of people within the IAS, that for a variety of reasons, some visionary officers and some politicians took some decisions, and today it works better than other places. So
what works better than other places, Ambrish? I lost you there.
Tamil Nadu's public health system.
I see.
State of Tamil Nadu. I mean, if I talk about Rajasthan, where I've seen things up close, uh, in Ganganagar District Hospital, there were women sleeping on the floor delivering babies out of 300 bedded, and out of the remaining 250 beds, 150 beds were lying vacant. So when I asked the head of the hospital why can't you expand it to the next ward, he said, "Sir, am I empowered to do it? Can I really use these beds, which is a burn ward and a accident ward for women's deliveries?" Then I told him, "Yes, I am saying so. You please do it." So in one day, this whole you'll see a lot of these sorry state of India where they'll show all these women with their little babies, 2 women sleeping on one bed, 3 people sleeping on one bed. I mean, a whole lot of that is a management issue. It's not a resource issue. It's a management issue, and these things can be solved, but it will take a lot of commitment from people to solve these things. And many states would have solved these things, and many states would not have. And India is such a large place. Even if one city solves it, you need to solve it in the next city also. So, I mean, there are multiple aspects to this whole thing. Like if I were to say, if you look at, I've lived in the US for about 4 years, and what I found in US is that US is an engineered nation. Everything is designed. I mean, when we say design, from an engineering perspective, you look at, okay, this is what the system is supposed to perform. This is its optimal capacity. If you overload it, it will go till this point. Everything has been thought through. That's how you do engineering. So in America, all that system is very deeply engineered. If you come to India, it's more of an organic growth. That level of engineering detail is only there in certain aspects of things in India. Most of the systems in India are not so deeply designed. So that kind of mindset is not there in India. India is an ancient culture. It's a 10,000-year-old culture. United States is a 400-year-old culture. And, in US, they started afresh and they designed it in a different way. And in India, to achieve that level of design, see, when I say design, if you buy a BMW or a Mercedes, it's a design machine. It behaves in a predictable way. And so same way, everything can be designed. So in India, that level of design is not there. So a whole lot of brilliant people like Munish are sitting and doing firefighting there. So what Munish is counting as a success is things which he has designed. So a few of those things which James was counting, that's where he has used his IT and skills to design things to deliver things in a very short period. In a period of 1 or 2 years, he managed to give these certificates to 6 crore population of Karnataka, which people had been, nobody had access to something like that. And he put all the land records in a mobile app, and everybody is able to access that just like that. And he must have done it for a couple of years. So I'm saying,
Yeah.
So if if IITians would want to join in, I would say forget NGO. You can come in through lateral entry. Government of India is taking in people through lateral entry. People who have, I would say, people who have technical and leadership experience. Only those kind of people would have. Purely technical people in India, nobody cares. You have to be street smart, and you should have learned to master the office politics. Only then you should join the Indian government. Without that, it will be.
One thing, if Amrish,
Go ahead, Manish.
one thing of the India being organic, I would want to add, it's also organic on the citizen side also. You will see that our citizen wants freedom also, and the responsibility also, or to freedom of the citizen, responsibility of the government. So that I would say I've never virtually been to USA, never lived there. The trade-off is really emotionally taken in India, I would say, compared to any other country. And our politicians go along with that emotion, and you get the product of that, output of that emotion. So people also have to, the society, the government, and the organic part happens from the people side also. For example, for the last 5 months, even after the first wave tapered off, I kept on writing, telling within the government, outside, please, continue with your good behavior, which is COVID appropriate behavior. It won't happen. You try to implement any law. I tried doing it in masking implementation in Bangalore. Every intellectual opposed it. What bullshit is this? People are physically attacking people who are trying to do, mask enforcement. I mean, it's there is absolutely no, uh, uh, you know, that they cannot digest any rule following. It's a proverbially well known how much of us, and how many of us are happy getting into a queue, and Indians are famous for that. So it's a product of this whole both the sides kind of a thing. So that's why I keep saying some of you and many of you, I absolutely know would be knowledge centers of the place you live in. Please transform that thing where people understand that they're in control of their own lives rather than somebody else, in terms of responsibility also. That really would help a lot, I would say.
Okay. So, like following up, so what is the right amount of federalism that India should have, given this kind of, especially for responding to a situation like this? There is individual responsibility, there is collective responsibility, there is states' responsibility, there is nations' responsibility, and also, there should be some kind of coordinated response across nations too. How can we do better in, this may not be the last pandemic that we will face.
See, James, when you're using these words, federalism and all, I think fundamentally, if we look at the design of the Indian polity, I don't have any complaints about it. Okay, it's the main issue, according to me, is with the quality of management, competence in leadership. Okay, I will repeat that: management, competence in leadership. So when somebody is running a very large system, they need to have a certain level of competence in terms of, do they really know how to handle a large system? Large systems have a lot of inertia, and if you take a decision, what kind of impact it will have, and who should you choose as your advisor? These kind of issues are faced by the CEOs of large corporations. So, I mean, these kind of issues are there in other countries also, but somewhere I feel that in other countries, they have more systemic approach to political leadership than in India. So in my experience, the quality of the chief minister has a lot to do with the long-term and immediate-term results that a state sees in India. So Mr. Modi did fantastic outcomes in Gujarat as CM. Mr. Nitish Kumar did fantastic outcomes in Bihar as CM. And Chandrababu Naidu did fantastic outcomes in Andhra Pradesh as CM. So some of these people who have had very high level of competence have delivered with the same laws and the same system, whereas other people have not managed to deliver. So how do you handle the next pandemic? Yes, you have to make sure that you start measuring outcomes in every single government health facility. Can we have a way to measure outcomes? How many minutes does it take to see a doctor? How often do you get the medicine that the doctor prescribes? How often is the lab reagent? These outcomes are today neither measured and nor are they known in thousands of government facilities. If you look at the number of government facilities, let's say in a state of Karnataka, which has 30 districts, there would be about 40 district level hospitals, then there would be about 400 community health centers, and there'll be probably about 4,000 primary health centers, and there'll be about 40,000 sub-centers. Manish can correct the numbers. I'm just throwing off the top of my head. Rajasthan members. So you try and imagine a health system with 50,000 establishments spread across a large geography, managed by one IAS officer. I want to see who wants to take that job and deliver a certain quality of outcome in every single health establishment, in every.
Ambrish, we are not able to hear you well. I will come back to you.
Oh, sorry, you didn't hear me? What I just
Your
said?
audio is interrupting, Ambrish.
Yeah.
No, Ambrish, with your permission,
okay.
I'll just try to say more directly answer Jimbo's question. See, I'll tell you the way I have seen the government. Our political leaders evaluate what will make people happy in the short run. Okay. Please understand, here is a guy who is the boss of the things. He takes decisions, he's the head. And his thought process works, generally speaking, what will make people happy in the short term, immediately. Now, if you want him to take good decisions, you need that reward punishment mechanism needs to be slightly better happening. Some of the, as Amrish said, some good chief ministers, good politicians delivered good results. They got, good response from the people also. But please understand, when India did not enforce COVID appropriate behavior because our politicians assessed people don't want it. I kept writing as the head of the state war room to do certain things again and again and again within the government. They never implemented it because people don't want. They assessed that. And that assessment perhaps is true. What happens, I have this analogy. Imagine each one, we are sitting, how things, improving things in India at least looks like. Imagine all of us are watching a cricket match in a stadium and all of us are standing, or let us say we are all sitting. The first fellow gets up and he gets a very good view because he's standing. Or he's not the only one smart fellow. Everybody stands up after seeing him that he's standing up and nobody is enforcing anything. At the end of the thing, everybody is standing, everybody's legs are paining, but the view is the same. Now in this situation, now this is India's situation. You ask one fellow, please sit down, things will be better. The first fellow who will sit down will see nothing. And he revolts. You are making me enforce. I see nothing. This whole system is rotten. I will not cooperate because naturally the first few people who will sit down in this cricket stadium will see nothing. And the fact of the matter is that transition slightly being painful, our politicians' decision making works on that way. And Jimbo, what we need to do is somehow build a consensus, around definitely COVID. I believe it is built, at least after this kind of a situation, to take some of the right decisions across the society. And if we can build systems, where some kind of a, participation is there of people in understanding that some of the harder decisions will benefit them. It's there, it will be useful. Generally, we have I personally, my assessment is there's quite a substantial number of people, at least in our country, who tend to be very, very reactive when personally thinks they have to suffer for a common good in a normal time. So it has become like a, unpleasant thing which most of the governments don't enforce. You call it encroachments, you call it, getting into the forests, you call it getting into building things over the lakes, you call it our civic behavior, so on and so forth. The same very people in USA, I went, the taxi driver in USA did not agree, he was an Indian, to take one extra fellow, but here he would take and he'll encourage. So the whole of this, if we want things to improve, there has to be slightly more consensual approach, I would say, of the society and the government of the right thing to do, even if it is unpleasant. I don't know if it answers.
Hey, Ambrish, turn off your video and maybe the audio will get better.
Yeah, I'll wrap with the personal question.
I've turned it off.
Manish, I'll wrap with the personal question. So both you and your wife are into service, and Rupa's TED Talk is quite inspiring. Tell us about both how both of you have supported each other in taking on the mighty and the powerful. For example, the exposing the corruption in the Shashikala's case, or any of those. You've taken the mighty and powerful without any fear.
Okay, thank you. And I am very privileged that I'm more known by my wife than myself. And that's no exaggeration, actually. And yours is a very pertinent question. See, I'm typically a technical kind of a backroom kind of a guy. So my wife has immense faith in me in terms of knowing laws, rules, everything. Second thing she has is she's fearless. Literally, she never gets any fear. It's somebody who can jump from the 10th floor without thinking of the consequences. So what she does once in a while before taking all these foolish things, as many people see it, she'll ask me, am I technically right or wrong? I would tell her, you are technically right and nothing will happen to you. Even if government will issue you a disciplinary action, you're on the right side of law. She believes me, and after that she's absolutely fearless. That's how I supported her. I told her that she's on the right track and nobody can harm her because she's right. And after that, then after that she went all out. Then that's what she does. She asks me if she's on the wrong side of rule or law or something, which I tell her very clearly and truly. And generally she is not, because common sense tends to be on the right side of law. And after that, she is very, very good. The other way I have supported her is whenever she gets any, love letter from the government paper, I draft all her replies, on technical details, how she has done. For example, in one particular case, she got this notice why government should not take disciplinary action against her for telling some truth about some problem in the office, superintendent of police. So then I drafted that, under now the new RTI Act, to tell any truth which has a public good is protected under the Right to Information Act. So that reply I sent. Then after 6 months, I got a call from 2-3 officers. That was a very good reply. Please give us a copy so that we can also use it, kind of a thing. So what I can say is, basically, this is the role I have played. She just sounds with, I'm a sounding board only on the point that she is not technically wrong. If I tell her to be careful, then she says you get lost. If I were like you, I would have never done
other
things.
way around also, yeah, other way around also.
I'm not able to hear you.
How she helps you, you have to tell. You're only going one-sided.
Yeah, she helps me. I'm a totally irresponsible person. She takes care of the whole family, one, absolutely. And she takes care of, most of the other things in life. I only focus on big things, so-called big things. I'm totally useless in most of the other fronts. Without her, I would not have been able to do things I have done. Otherwise, spending my time morning till evening, everything. It's a very, very beautiful thing that I've got. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Manish. Ambrish, tell us about are you able to? Hello.
Yes, James, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I remember visiting you a few years back, and we visited the nature school where your wife was teaching. So you both have intensely pursued, what gives more meaning to life. So tell us about the journey of discovering yourself. And this is the last question. And how has spirituality helped you with your career?
Okay. So fundamentally, I will say that discovering myself is a very cliched phrase, but what I have discovered is very, very simple, ordinary things like, why do I get upset with things? Why do I get irritated with things? How do I handle situations which are unpleasant? How do I handle things where you don't know what's the right thing to do? So this is where the spiritual process has been a great support. What spiritual process has done for me is to balance my energies and boost them in a very significant way. So all these years, I would do my yogic kriyas in the morning. Last 19 years, I've been doing it. And I would go out. And my experience would be the day I do my Kriya and go, whole day goes effortlessly. Whatever may be the kind of situation I face, I have the right answer to it and I know what to do. And as an IITian, I had a very strong sense of logic. But what the spiritual process did for me was the Kriya strengthens my other intuitive aspect also. And I'm able to listen to people, empathize with them, not necessarily say on their face what is right, what is wrong all the time, because that's not what people want. People want to be listened to. If you want to lead people, they don't want you to tell them, oh, this, they are not like software programming which needs to be debugged all the time. I mean, that used to be my approach before I started doing spiritual process, that whatever somebody said, I used to listen to it as if it was source code of something. So those kind of ironed out of my way of being, and I've been largely free of any diseases, and I have hardly taken any medication in the last 19 years. And generally my day starts very, very fresh, and whatever I have done or not done in the previous day, it gets all cleaned out. And also over a period of time, what I found was that my ability to read people went up significantly. My ability to talk to people. I mean, I used to hold meetings of all my employees in one go, all hands meeting, 1,000 people in one auditorium, call from all over Rajasthan. And I used to talk to them without any script, just, extempore and open session. People can ask any question and I will answer. And I used to do that over a video conference with 10,000 people. Anything you ask, I'm willing to answer. And there was a certain, for the lack of a better word, confidence. But I think it's more than confidence, an ability to connect with human beings and see where they are coming from, what their world is, and when they are asking something, where it's coming from and how do we address it. That kind of clarity has come over the years by doing these spiritual practices, and shifted some 15 houses and some 15 different postings. I don't feel scarred by life. I feel still very, very happy and fulfilled with whatever I have done as part of the government. It's been, I would like to acknowledge my father for having pushed me into this IAS job. And because by myself, I would have never gone here. But the spiritual process allowed me to make use of this opportunity of being in the government. And despite being very, very challenging, I don't feel bitter about it. I've gone through all kinds of ups and downs and situations, and still, I think I made significant impact on people's lives in Rajasthan and built systems which will outlast, whatever my tenure is, things which will last for maybe the next 100 years. And about my wife, she's pursued Drupad, and she was a Bharatanatyam dancer. Then she did Drupad for almost 20 years. And now she's doing a part-time MBA, and she's joined her dad's business as the CEO of the company. So that's what she's doing. She already had a passion to earn lots of money, and she realized after some time that I'm not the guy who will earn lots of money for her. So she said, oh, I'll earn it myself.
Well, thank you, Manish and Ambrish, for your commitment to the country and inspiring us, and being candid about situation. Manish.
Let's open it up for questions, right? Anybody else who has any additional questions? We have some more minutes that.
I don't know, Jimbo, if you saw Vinay Malhotra and Vinay Karle, they both had posed a question each on the chat. Right?
Yes. Okay, I thought
can
we were
summarize them for you, or if you want to.
Yeah, Manish has responded as well.
Manish had responded to one of the questions. I think the only question unanswered is about how did highly dense Dharavi manage, and what is there to learn from there? Manish?
I would say firstly, I'm sitting outside. It will not be fair on my part, but I'll be brutal as far as my honest opinion is concerned and tell you. See, any great story is a combination of presentation and actual work. Just keep that in mind. The best stories are not the real best stories. The best stories you hear are not generally the best stories that they exist. Best stories you hear are the combination of good work and good presentation. I would say that they responded in Dharavi. I'm sitting outside. I'll compare more from Karnataka's experience. The virus has its own natural cycle. After a while, all of us can claim, and it's not. See, it's too incredibly great what Dharavi has achieved. I'll put it in as a combination of the virus running its cycle and people, finally waking up to it, both the administration and the local. It must be the combination of these two. See, the point, I'll put it in a different way. We are looking to a real life situation. There's some great trick solution. There is none. It's an absolute, and there's no overnight transformations generally happening anywhere in the world. If you hear an overnight transformation happening somewhere, it's not likely to be true. Yes, one of the few transformations I have really heard about, which perhaps are true, is one Surat's transformation after plague, okay? And that still took some time. But not to take away, see, the problem is in such a pandemic, you cannot know, as I said, which part of the effort is yielding which part of the result. So I keep telling, the situation you see in Delhi is a cliche way of putting it. The situation you are seeing in Bangalore, it is after the best effort. If that best effort was not there, it would be maybe 10 times of what it is right now. So the failure we see is after the success of the efforts. So that is the kind of issue we are dealing with in COVID. So without taking away the great success of Dharavi, I mean to say it's a combination of those 2-3 factors. And much more predictably, if we are able to assess the requirement of medical equipment in advance, if we had been able to do that, if we had been able to build our vaccine requirements in advance, that would have been a much clear-cut success.
मनीष, यू स्टे इन बॉम्बे, तो तुम्हें कुछ ऐसे पता है धारावी के बारे में या वहां से कुछ?
Not particularly, no. I mean, I think, yeah, Dharavi is in good shape actually right now. And
one thing I can tell you, one thing I know technically, see, in Dharavi and elsewhere also, they picked people in the beginning and they put them in, out of the localities, all the people who were testing positive, they would be picked and kept in a COVID care center outside the locality, which happened much more in phase 1 or wave 1. In the present wave 2, it is not happening. As I tell, now the people are roaming around, and that's why their numbers are larger. So Dharavi definitely did that, I know. If you turn positive, you're in Dharavi, they'll not leave you there because you'll end up spreading it to everybody. So forcibly, if I use that word, and by encouraging people to come out and go and sit outside in COVID care centers, that definitely helped Dharavi then. And at present, in the second wave, I'm absolutely not clear what exactly Dharavi is doing in second wave.
Actually, मतलब I would say कि second wave में ऐसी detail ही बाहर नहीं आ रही है, area wise. I mean, जो भी आ रही है वो बॉम्बे, पुणे, but ऐसा separately किसी एक part of that city के बारे में detail बाहर नहीं मिल रही है.
I'll tell you some numbers. Okay. Bombay virtually at its peak in the first wave, I've not tracked numbers of late. At its peak, we're doing 10,000 tests per day, COVID tests. Bangalore at its peak in the first phase was doing 50,000 tests per day. And Bangalore was being ridiculed for being the highest number of cases. I'll tell you the number of cases also. We were having 4,000 cases when we were doing 50,000 tests. Mumbai was having 1,500 cases and doing 10,000 tests. So if they had done 50,000 tests, they should have had 7,500 cases. You know, many states in our country are not doing enough testing. Definitely, they did not do enough testing in phase 1. You know, in phase 2, some of them are doing testing. The media is so simplistic in India, they only pick the total numbers, highest number of cases. Delhi, what they did, I can tell you. Delhi kept on doing RAT testing, rapid antigen testing. So their numbers were high, but they did not do RT-PCR testing as per my knowledge goes. This breakup is not available anywhere, not even to me. If you do 100 tests in Delhi, how many are RT-PCR and how many are RAT? Why is that relevant? I'll tell you. The RAT test has more than 50% false negatives. Now the problem when you give somebody a false negative, my personal opinion is it is better not to do RAT test than to do an RAT test. Why? Because if at least the person is scared that he is positive. The minute you give him a RAT test and he's false and negative, he goes out and have a party. And this is, I believe, one of the core reasons for high spread in Delhi in the first phase. And comparatively, Tamil Nadu always and 100% did RT-PCR testing. You know, so these detailing matters. So what? I mean, media in India is absolutely not capable of analyzing things properly. Whatever you tell them, they just print it. And until today, they keep printing absolute numbers. They don't look into the positivity rate. They don't look into the, you know, if I score 100 marks out of 1,000, they'll clap me. Another person who's scoring 90 out of 100, they'll say he scored only 90. This is their level. And this is the news you all get. Just see how many times they talk of positivity rate, percentages, and how many most of the time they keep on talking about absolute numbers. There's a lot of incentive for the states to do less testing. You do less testing, you show less numbers, you're better than others. Karnataka, definitely we resisted it. There was a decision taken to reduce the testing. I went to the health minister, let us not reduce no matter what, even if we get, and we were being ridiculed, being the worst affected state in the country. December, that was in October last year in September. But we stayed the course. Now also Karnataka is doing 2 lakh testing per day. Last year we were doing around 1 lakh testing per day. That itself will give us a double the number of cases compared to last time. But now the second wave is there. You know, if you take, I mean, it's a very simple maths, all of you understand what's happening. But nobody in media tends to understand. Nobody deflates the number of positive cases reported by the number of tests done by a state. A state doing less tests is better than the state doing more tests. A state where the people are dying without being recognized that they have COVID ends up looking better than the state which is actually recognizing and putting out people.
So Manish, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Is ICMR or there's no other government body who's analyzing it and publishing it in a way where media can understand? I can see why media doesn't understand, but there must be a body who then analyzes it and publishes it in the right way for common man and media to understand, right? Are we missing that?
I'll answer it like this. As Amrish said, we have a absolute division between, to make it more clear, an absolute division between the functionalities of the state and the central government. ICMR is a central government organization. If it puts out any figure in public domain, it will become a political football. So every state, firstly, under the constitution, this part of the work is the responsibility of the concerned state. So the ICMR practically is in no position to put out any parallel figures, either contradicting or reiterating the information of the state government. The state government, you can say, is supreme. You are the CEO of the company. Another fellow may have a better information than you, but he will not put out. So ICMR actually is not going to put out. And they're not even the organization. They're more like a back-end system organization. The front end is entirely in the hands of the states. And some states, it suits them to just put the absolute numbers, not do this real talk, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, majority of them, I would say, are doing that, and deliberately or by lack of knowledge. So I mean, the media takes it up. It
So
suits
isn't-
everyone.
One question.
So can ICMR not enforce that this is the metrics that you guys should provide? Or the states should provide?
I'll put it in this way. Can I enforce, if imagine you, I would call that, as I said, so state is supreme in this aspect. The minute you try to impose something, let us say on Karnataka government, I can take any government's name, the government will turn around and say, who are you to tell us what is truth in my state? You are a vested interest outside organization who know nothing about me. The whole thing will become a political football. And you are assuming that ICMR is some god. Finally, they are also administered by some people sitting in Delhi who also have their own feelings, you know what I mean? It's better everybody talks their own story. That's better.
So one question I had, Manish, is
So guys, just one last question, okay? Yeah, go ahead, Shamit. Shulkar.
there is a lot of social stigma associated with COVID. I mean, every time anybody tests positive, the house is sealed, the building is sealed. So it's unfortunate that it is being done that way, but I think that also is a driver for a lot of people not to get tested, or for a lot of people to actually not report, even if they're having the symptoms. So are there any proactive measures being done to reduce the social stigma per se? Because in Mumbai, I mean, you have the BMC person coming in, the ceiling of the society is just, it's terrible.
You have any suggestion?
I don't know, because here in the US, in Los Angeles, we were doing 30,000 cases a day, and nobody here seems to, I mean, there was nothing put on somebody's house that, well, that this person is COVID positive or anything. I mean, nothing stopped them other than their own conscience. I'm not going to the grocery store. I mean, that's just that.
So why you think we were forced, I mean, the government took a decision to put it on their board, doors?
नहीं पता ना, इसीलिए पूछ रहा हूँ, मतलब
Because the guys
जानने की
who
कोशिश करो।
stay in, they will bluff. They will not tell anybody. They will not show social responsibility to stay inside their houses. Absolutely, this is the real situation we faced. That people absolutely deliberately will never tell that they are infected, and they'll go around irresponsibly infecting others. Now, what do we do in this situation?
Yeah, I concur. I suppose it's necessary.
This is the assessment I also have. You know, more often than not, people would hide it and go around infecting others irresponsibly. That's not an insubstantial number. I'm almost tempted to say majority does this.
Oh my God. Sad to hear.
The problem I'll tell you in our country is, unlike I believe, I don't know why it happens, apart from culturally, India is you can't function in India without a maid. Your wife will kill you if you don't have a maid in India. And if you're COVID positive, you'll not tell your maid you're COVID positive. I mean, that the charity starts at home. Your wife will not allow you to tell. I mean, that's Mumbai for you, or that's Bangalore for you. And there's no household, I believe, in Mumbai or Bangalore which does not have a maid. It's a very simple example. Secondly, the guy will say, oh, what is the big deal? I can just put on the mask and go to the market and come back. He'll do that. Secondly, I believe in US people are singly self-reliant. Here, people are very well integrated. Another problem is nobody in India would tell about their friends whom they were in touch with over the past 14 days before they turned positive. I have myself seen this in contact tracing. People say, I never went out of my house. Why? Because his friend will rebuke him that you told that I was with you, because of which now I'm being quarantined for 10 days. So he's true to his friend and not true to the society. Absolutely nobody will tell. We had 1 or 2 contacts per person. And that is after the lockdown was opened. We had more contacts before lockdown per patient than after. And frankly, we found data by doing violations which people in USA will hang us. Otherwise, you just get no data. तुम्हारा दोस्त तुम्हें छोड़ेगा ही नहीं भाई. उसका बताया कैसे तुमने नाम? कोई नहीं बताता किसके साथ था, क्या था. मैं तो गया ही नहीं जी घर के बाहर, घर वालों से भी नहीं मिला, रूम से ही नहीं निकला मैं. It's sad. it is tough.
नहीं बट कुड इट बी ऑल्सो बिकॉज यू नो ऑल दिस क्वारंटाइन फैसिलिटीज एक्सेट्रा जो है इंडिया में हमारे, फिर वो जो स्पेशली गवर्नमेंट वाली है पब्लिक फैसिलिटीज, वी ऑल नो यार वो इतनी डिसमल है कि वहां जाना नहीं चाहते हैं लोग। फिर अब वो दोस्त
संजय,
मेरा
I
उस
totally
बात से
agree
डर
with
रहा
you.
है।
Sanjit,
I totally agree with you.
I'd like to just step in. My uncle and my aunt. My uncle is 73. My aunt is 65. They were both diagnosed with COVID. They live in a small flat with their kid and their son and daughter-in-law. So they went to the government facility here in Chennai and got themselves quarantined in a government facility. They came back in 1 week. They said they had food catered from a restaurant outside, not from a 5-star restaurant, but from a decent restaurant. The facilities were clean. Toilets were common toilets, but clean. They came back and they were all praised for the government facilities here in Chennai. So it's not, a universal thing all over India. So
One thing I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. There is a truth on most statements what he said, but what I can tell you is, ideally, as a policy maker, I would like people to stay in their homes in home isolation. So if they had capacity to elevate their basic sense of taking care of themselves beyond a certain level, I also believe as a policy, it is much better to keep people at their homes. Because there would be some exceptions, exceptionally bad. In general, things are not that bad. What I've seen is when they come, even the smallest thing, they start making an issue also. So not that the government things are not bad. Some of them are really bad also. But everything said and done, unless somebody cannot stay at home, it is always better to stay at home rather than in a COVID care center.
So even so this in a way relates to what I was saying ना, कि इसीलिए तो वो दोस्त डरता होगा कि यार मेरा नाम तो बता देगा। फिलहाल लास्ट टाइम की बात कर रहा हूँ मैं, ज्यादा मे नॉट बी दिस वे, बट वो डर इसलिए रहा है कि नाम बता दिया तो प्राइवेट तो बहुत ज्यादा कोविड हॉस्पिटल नहीं हुए हैं, अब गवर्नमेंट सेंटर में मुझे भी डाल देंगे 14 दिन के लिए, तो वहां मेरी क्या हालत हो जाएगी मेरी लाइफ। तो अभी वो क्रिएट हो चुका है ऐसा, तो सब छुपा रहे हैं बस एक दूसरे से काइंड ऑफ ऐसा।
No, that was in the very beginning, first 2-3 months. After July 2020, at least in Bangalore and Karnataka, we did not take people to the COVID care center just because they were contacts. After July 2020, it has not happened. Before that, numbers were small, we could do that. But after that, it is not there. So, I mean, it's not that they'll be taken. They don't want to stay home. They want to roam around.
And शिवालकर जो सोशल स्टिग्मा का बोल रहा था, मैं बताता हूँ, वो तो मतलब अच्छी सोसाइटीज में भी होता है यार। मतलब मैं आई एम इन द मैनेजमेंट कमेटी ऑफ माय सोसाइटी हरिगंगा, जो है जहाँ रहता हूँ। अराउंड 900 फ्लैट्स हैं, 800 ऑक्यूपाइड होंगे, 3500 प्लस लोग हैं यहाँ पे। यहाँ मतलब सब थोड़ी अच्छी ही सोसाइटी है, ऐसे मतलब महंगे ही फ्लैट्स हैं। चीपेस्ट फ्लैट 50 लाख का होगा यहाँ पे अभी। तो उधर भी हमने ये सब देखा, मतलब हो गया है, किसी को थोड़ा सा पॉजिटिव मालूम पड़ा है तो बाकी लोग ऐसे शुरू हो जाते थे हमको मैसेजेस डालना, उनका दरवाजा खुला है, वो लिफ्ट में गई थी उस दिन, या उनके घर की बाई या जो भी, मतलब ऐसा पीपिंग इनटू अदर्स हाउस एंड कंप्लेनिंग ऐसा, एंड पर्सनल वेंजेंस फॉर एंड का भी निकाल रहे हैं सब लोग। मैंने देखा उसकी गैलरी में वो आया था, ये आया था, वो आया था। हम तो पागल हो गए ये सब हैंडल करते इतनी सी सोसाइटी में सिर्फ।
तो सिर्फ गवर्नमेंट कितना पागल हो गया होगा वो तो है। लेकिन
मैं ऐसा बोलूंगा, इससे मैं ये नहीं बोलूंगा कि मैं गवर्नमेंट को एकदम ऐसा फिर सहानुभूति दे दूंगा, ऐसा भी नहीं है। रिसोर्सेज भी उसके हिसाब से मैच होने चाहिए ना, मैच आइडियली तो होने चाहिए ना फिर।
नहीं, मैं पार्ट ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट मे बी ए पार्टली बायस्ड व्यू आई लाइक टू टेल कि हमारे यहाँ पे बैंगलोर मुंबई टाइप लोग, माइंड तो उनका न्यूयॉर्क में चला गया है, बट उनका बिहेवियर अभी इंडियन ही है। For themselves, they want New York. For others, they'll be Indians. So, ऐसा है.
Right.
Guys, the Q&A obviously will keep going on. Shall we move to the rest of the agenda for the day, or does anybody have any burning question, or can we move to the next?
Thanks a lot, guys. Then, if there's nothing,
I think LP posed a question which is probably relevant before we let Manish go. Has to do with a charity to specifically help for the pandemic relief effort. So, particular charity.
Yeah, Manish, do you recommend any specific charities you can help immediately right now? Like where people want to donate money, they don't know whom to donate to.
Well, he didn't mention charity, but it could be even PM Cares or whatever, wherever the money can make the maximum impact.
See, I would say, better if you can donate something in kind. It will get more directly used. If you want to give cash, you can give it to the Chief Minister Relief Fund or the Prime Minister Care or Relief Fund, whatever you call it. But then you will not get the satisfaction of, you may not have, generally they're not so misused, okay? They're not so misused. Somebody needy only will get it generally. And that's all I can say. And if you are wanting to help specifically for pandemic, there are groups here. What I'll do, LP, I'll try to share. In every city, there are people who are trying to feed people, trying to give them medical supplies, trying to give them, masks and so on and so forth. I know a lot of them, so not a specific person. So I can put you through to them and you can try to give it to them or help them.
Yeah.
Sure.
That'll be very helpful, I think. Yeah. Thanks, Manish.
Yes. Thanks a lot. Well, log off now. Thanks everybody, and thanks for being.
I hope to see you. You can join us for the Silver Jubilee reunion in December.
Yeah, my
You're
pleasure.
technically our
Manish,
badge.
please join us.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you for your service, man.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot,
My
Manish.
pleasure and my privilege.
Thanks, Manish. Yeah. Thanks,
Bye,
Ambrish.
Bye.
Thank you, Manish.
I think Ambrish had logged off earlier. I think he has a hard stop at 10 o'clock. So
Okay.
he doesn't use any technology after 10 p.m.
Okay, so let's go through the mundane agenda.
Yeah, let's do that. So I can start first. Not much to add in terms of, I think the most of the activities are happening, in terms of outreach. My main task right now is to just, kind of maintain the alumni list and update as I'm getting updates from the outreach team, from regional hospital contacts, department contacts, and so on. So just a sincere request, everybody, please RSVP. We are just trying to push that because that allows us, your latest contact information, so we can reach out to you later on for legacy project discussions, fundraising, profiles for your book and everything. So yeah, just try and talk to your friends, hostel mates, batchmates, department mates. Please RSVP. We've got about 247 RSVP right now, and slowly starting to get some MTechs, MSCs, MDes, and so on, but not much luck with the postgrads yet. We're trying. We just managed to send our monthly newsletter out. First one, Chandra Shetty, thanks from H9. He's going to draft newsletters, make sure we're going to get updates to everyone out every month. Not everybody's active on Signal, not everybody's active on WhatsApp or whatever. So these emails we are collecting as part of the RSVP. We will also use that to make sure everybody's updated, what's going on, who's doing what do we need from you, and so on. So I think that's yeah. So I think that's all I have from my side. I'm like, if anybody needs to reach out, anybody at IDBA, HF, DRF, let me know. I'm interfacing with them. So if you need to talk to somebody, just let me know. I'll try to be the single point of contact. So they have to deal with one person. Yeah. That's it from my side. I think what we'll do is we'll run through everybody's update quickly. And then we'll take collective Q&A for any questions on logistics or anything of that sort. So next, Shivalkar, you want to just give an update on the outreach?
Yeah, so trying to reach out to PGs specifically, and also the people from H9. Unfortunately, those lazies want me to fill their forms, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to do their RSVP today. So PGs managed to get a hold of a couple of them. These were graduates who graduated in '95, but they did an RA and then they graduated. So at least trying to basically harvest some contacts from them. So that's essentially what's going on. Not much luck there this week, but yeah.
The outreach has done an excellent job in the last, I think, 4 weeks. I think we've got to almost 250 numbers pretty quickly. So yeah. We need all the help from the hostel and
even if a
department
lot
contacts.
of people, 250 is a 247. What was the count I saw yesterday or day before? I think it's pretty good.
Yeah. But long way to go. So I think we'll keep nibbling at it.
Oh yeah, we have to
we'll
keep pushing till the last day. Yes. And I think we have to help as an outreach team. We also have to help Anurag because he specifically mentioned that he needed some help there to at least get people's pictures, etc. So we'll see.
Cool. Okay. You can go to fundraising next, Bindu.
Yeah.
I know you spoke to Devesh recently, so whatever update you have, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Still very early days. And first of all, I mean, thanks to everybody who comes to these Zoom sessions. It's like a significant part of your Saturday. So thanks for that. But yeah, just in terms of a really quick update, very early days, waiting for the outreach team to have a significant number of emails collected. 250, I think we're doing really well at this time of the year. Just a really quick update in terms of what we've done so far. It's just still informational. I'm trying to reach out to various different fundraising point of contacts from years before, just to get information from them. I spoke to Devesh, I got a bunch of documents. And so we've got a signal group going for fundraising. Anyone who wants to volunteer, please do so. Please let us know, and we'll add you to that signal group. We're desperately looking for someone who'll help us with PG fundraising. So I don't know if there's anyone here who is in the PG batch. If so, it'd be great if you could help with fundraising. In terms of a quick update, the first thing we'll want to pull together is a document which kind of outlines where the funds will go, legacy project, no doubt, but also some of the other stuff that you can devote your funds to. We'll also want to talk about why we're doing this effort. And so the first plan is to pull together a good document. The 95 batch put together a really great doc. So I'll be sharing that with the rest of the fundraising team over this weekend, and we can get started on that document. Typically, fundraising really starts around June, July, according to Devesh, and kind of ramps up in August. And really a lot of the money comes in pretty much close to the reunion itself. Just to refresh everybody's numbers here, 95 batch raised 20 crore. Median donation was 5 lakh. On the higher side, you get around 20-25 lakhs, with about 10 to 20 people donating a crore each. So that's kind of what we are kind of aiming for, overall goal. We'll obviously get much more ramped up, both through the email outreach, which is obviously going to be coordinated with the outreach team, as well as through personal calling. Hopefully that all ramps up in the next couple of months or so. The other last final kind of nuanced point that Devesh had, just so everybody here knows this, is that the legacy project, the final decision is typically apparently made at the end, when we kind of know how much funds we are actually going to be raising. So let's say we raise 20 crores, you can afford XYZ, 25 crores, you can afford something else. And so what we would want to do ideally maybe is to identify 3 or 4 kind of candidate legacy projects. The second part of this is any kind of pet projects like setting up a dinner club or setting up a Japanese garden. He deeply discouraged us to do that. He was basically saying those kinds of things are really hard to kind of execute on, and it'd be better to stick to what the director or the IIT team really wants. Anyway, so that's that for now. We again, any volunteers, especially in the PG batch, very appreciated.
So Bindu, something, did you also have somebody in Bangalore? Because like Silicon Valley of India, Bangalore probably is a...
I have someone in India, that's Anurag. I think Anurag has said that he would he would volunteer, but I don't know if I don't know where Anurag is. Anurag, where are you?
Pune.
Pune. So the short answer. Okay, short answer is no. So yeah, good point. We need more
Cops is in Bangalore. I think Cops might be a good person. He's in Bangalore.
Cops is not even here. I mean, kaha hai? Anyway, yeah.
So he's not here, but we can try to engage him if possible.
Yeah.
Who's this?
Prashant Kopula.
Don't know him.
Prashant Kopula.
Kemi hai that.
There are a lot of people in Bangalore. So I think anyway, we have to find somebody who's...
I know.
Tons of people in Bangalore. So.
Okay. Yeah. Good suggestion. We'll track someone down.
Okay. Thanks, Bindu. I think we can have Vinay Malhotra talk about legacy project. We're going to split, right? Bindu's handling the fundraising part and Vinay is handling the actually deciding what legacy project we want to pick. So Vinay, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Flora. So good morning, good evening, everybody. So I think Bindu already mentioned that, right? So all this money we will collect eventually has to then become a project. Traditionally, that is what most of our previous batches have done, is that they have left a project with IIT, which is useful to IIT in one form or other, either for the faculty or for the students or for the campus, etc. Right? So what I and the team are doing from the legacy project side is to streamline the process of identifying that project. Let's say that most simply put, right? So there is a document which we have created on the Google Drive. What I'll do is I'll actually share, as now we have grown into a much bigger group than when we started. I'll share that link again. And essentially, there are about 10 odd ideas on the table today, coming from the batchmates currently. And we are continuing those meetings within our group. The process is to, anybody has any good idea which they think will be useful for IIT, whether for the faculty, students, campus, whatever, they drop that idea into the Google Drive document and explain it in a few paragraphs on what they want to achieve. In that process, we have also collected the opinion, let's say, from some of the younger faculty. That is what we did last weekend, thanks to Sanjit, who organized it through some of his contacts. And that was really, really good talk on, capturing the views of a younger faculty, people who are, let's say, 5 to 10 years into their professor seats, right? So that way, I think the document is getting richer, the content is getting richer, which is what we intend to do in the current, let's say in the next month. And then sometime in July, working with the governing body, we'll decide a date in which let's say that at the end we are left with 10 or 12 ideas. Those 12 people will then pitch that idea to the wider community, to the whole 300, 400 people, whoever is willing to attend. I think it would be a call like this, will take about an hour and a half, and let people pitch their idea to the wider community. We will choose 3 to 4 ideas, the best ones. And at that point, it becomes a bit of an iterative process, as Bindu also just suggested, that we will have to work closely with the institute to make sure that the ideas we have on the table match the institute needs, match the budget we are able to generate also, right? So that will be the process on the second half, let's say post-July process, after we have shortlisted the top 3 or 4 ideas our batch feels they would like to leave as a legacy on the Silver Jubilee occasion for the IIT. And that's about it, I guess. As I said, post July, it becomes an iterative process, working with the fundraising committee, working with the institute to come down to the one idea which we'll leave as a legacy. Part of the funds we will collect will also go towards contributing to the ideas which were left behind by the previous batches, which are particularly the more sticky ideas, which are running for the long term, right? And those are the most, I would say, are the more useful legacy projects. And in a way to summarize, I would like, or we should aim to leave a project which even 10 years from now people are funding, because that would mean that we have left something which is really, really useful and we have made an impact for, from our batch. Thank you. Questions?
Okay, let Anurag go and we'll take question at the end, right? Okay. Anurag, yeah, and we'll take question at the end.
So
updates on the yearbook.
Yeah. Hi guys. So I talked to a couple of people, 2 or 3 people. Binan volunteered to help out, and he put me in touch with somebody who was in charge of the yearbook last year. I haven't talked to that guy, but I got a hold of the yearbook from last year. It was a whopping 400 plus pages, a PDF file. Then I talked to Carly, put me in touch with the person who's in charge of Fundamatics and the yearbook. She's the editor, Sharba Sen from IIT-BAA. She takes care of all the editing, layout, and she's the coordinator for everything. She gave me a very good document which overall describes the process of putting together the yearbook along with what they expect the deadlines to be. So I had a call with her this week, and the salient points are, the first thing that is on our table is to, as a batch, decide on a logo idea and a slogan if you want, because this is the starting point for the design. They take the logo, they take the slogan, hopefully in coherence with each other. And usually the batches have provided some sort of a crude graphics for the logo. One batch hired a designer themselves, made a good logo, but eventually the this collateral goes to the IITB AA designer who fine-tunes it, improves it, and extracts a color scheme, which becomes the theme for the yearbook. And everything is based on that. So the first thing which we as a group need to do is come up with, I was planning to send it out this week, but I thought it would be better to do it after this meeting because I didn't want to dilute the other mails coming in. So now I'm going to send a mail, maybe we'll send a mass mail asking people to give ideas about the logo and the catch line for our reunion. I don't know whether it's mandatory to have one, but it'll be good to have one because they also print it on a t-shirt and give it to everybody. So once that is done, then we need to work with the outreach team and collect the information for everybody who goes in the yearbook, which typically includes a current photograph, good resolution current photograph, the best past photograph that people have, or if the institute has or somebody else has. There's a questionnaire which people made. The last yearbook had around 15 questions, a pool of 15 questions which they sent to people as a Google form, which people are free to fill out. And then that forms the content for every individual in the yearbook. And that's the process. I'll share the deadlines later, but typically the logo has to be finalized by the end of May, logo and the tagline. So that's what we should start doing now. I think Shivalkar had very kindly volunteered. If needed, we could get some help from him because his father has contacts in the advertising industry. He runs an agency himself. So I would like that not to come to it because we should do it on our own. But if we can't, then maybe we need to get help from him and his father. But I think the idea is to get ideas first. The crux is to get an idea of what we should call this reunion, if we want to call it something, or what the logo should look like.
So Anurag, we should definitely call it something because we would need to put this on our fundraising PowerPoint.
Yeah. So the thing is, this becomes a chicken and egg, Bindu. We need something to get started. But yes, so I'm going to drive this, and I'll be a bit forceful on this, guys. Please don't mind because we will be working with a deadline, so we can't keep it open-ended. If we need to make a decision, I'll involve the smaller committee. May not be able to get everybody's to agree on something. That's the harsh truth of 400 people, a group of 400 people. So we'll come up with something. We'll agree to something which most of us like, hopefully all of us like. And I would like to get it done within the next couple of weeks so that we get time to refine it. Agreed. So tomorrow I'll send out a group message. I'll coordinate with Manish to send out a mass mail. So once that is done, then we need to collect the information. Okay, so that's the detail. Then there's one decision which we have to make is whether we want a printed yearbook or not. Because what has not happened so far is an online yearbook. They have a digital yearbook, which is a PDF file which people can access. What I suggested to them, which we had discussed earlier in a meeting, was if we could have an iitbombay.org/1996, that kind of a URL on iitbombay.org where everybody's profiles and yearbooks can go. The advantage is being that, if you have a 400-page yearbook, if you want to go sorted by department, that's not possible. Or if you want to sort it by hostel, that's not possible. Whereas if we do it online, we can, sort and dice it whichever way we want. So I was thinking maybe that's a good idea. IITB is trying to cut down on the printed yearbooks because it becomes a big problem for them in terms of budgets and logistics. They get a fixed amount per batch. They get around 7.5 lakh from IIT to do the yearbook, a majority of which goes for the design team, the designer and all the collateral that they create, etc. So Sharba was, I also personally feel that, if we can make it a pure digital, then maybe we should have an option of people opting to print it on their own. Maybe we can ask them to give us a PDF copy, which people who are interested can print. But that's another decision which we'll make, but not in the very near future. That's something which we should start discussing. Then that's more or less it. Yes, the last thing. One thing which has happened in all the past batches is that people don't respond. Okay, which is very natural, and we should try to minimize that. She said that last year they had a deadline of November for collecting all the material, and they sent it to print, and there were like typical IITians, a lot of people after the deadline send their stuff, said, we want to include this. So luckily it was a PDF, so they were able to add an appendix to it. But if we are doing it online and if we have a launch date, then it should not, we should not leave it till the end. I think the outreach team will have to force people. And I think we are doing a good job because Manish is coordinating things very well. He forces people to contact their hostel mates and their department mates. And I think we should keep doing that and get all the information needed. And I'll add, there's a lot more I've talked to people about and I've thought about, but let's leave it for the next meeting also. This is the gist of what we need to do in the next month.
So Anurag, one thing that I know from the past batches is that there is a lot of effort that will go in wordsmithing.
Right.
So I think you probably need help from the lit types to actually wordsmith everybody's profile. Because it cannot be as dry as just a questionnaire. Based on the questionnaire, you can probably write a few words.
Lit types. Why lit types? You need marketing types. Anyway.
Whatever types.
Are you volunteering, Bindu?
Yeah, well,
No, I'm not.
Bindu
I'm like
is a-
wondering, ki lit
You're the
ka
only
focus
marketing
kya?
person here.
Come on, that's a very big insult.
Yeah, but
Anyway.
Shivalkar, what I was thinking is we'll probably have a team of, for every hostel and for every department, we'll have a team which will vet everybody's profiles, make them as interesting as possible. So we'll get to that. That is on my agenda. I'll identify people. I'll help find people for that.
Because उसमें बहुत effort जाता है, because पिछले बार के लोग वही बोल रहे थे कि that took a fair bit of effort, because that's something that the alumni association people don't help you. Picture आ गया, लेकिन उसके बाद copy लिखने का बहुत time लगता है.
Right. The funny thing is, when we started this group, I thought let me volunteer for something small so that I don't get piled on.
Your
with
book is
something
not
big.
anything but small. It's the toughest
Anyway.
one.
Yeah, so I think I'll send out more details starting tomorrow. The first thing, everybody starts scratching their heads about what we call it and what the logo can represent.
Okay, so one quick thought, a 95 batch ka naam tha Reconvergence. Just
Right.
FYI to get going. Yeah.
I'll share, Sharba shared the logos from the last 5 batches. Couple of them were really very, very good. So I'll share them with everybody. I'll post
Yeah,
them
let's do that.
on the Google Drive and share with everybody.
Rathi, do you have an update? Okay, sorry. No, yeah, go ahead.
Guys, you caught me right when, the 10 minutes that I'd asked for, that I will be unavailable. And that's the 10 minutes that has come now. I had to drop my kid off at a lacrosse game. And you'll hear a lot of wind. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, all right.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, good. All right. Okay. Well, you don't have a choice. Listen, so I don't have much of an update because I don't have any ownership for anything, but first use me as a resource as you deem fit. I'm happy to help. And also, if Carle is tied up with something, I have access into the Heritage Foundation as well with my recent appointment into the executive committee. So, use me as a resource over there or even IIT BIA. The more important thing is, I didn't know what I was signing up for, but at some point, Carle and I were talking and he said, we need to document all these things in a way where, the future batches can use it as a manual or a handbook. So a lot of my work is in the background. I'm trying to keep all the digital assets as tight, together as possible, and then, have everything documented. And I'm on the side, I'm writing a handbook kind of a thing, which somebody can pick up, and going forward, they'll just take that. They don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of things that we have ironed out for them. These things have been happening. The reunions have been happening for many years, but we still don't have a central handbook kind of a thing. So what I need from you guys is, in order to, make that a little easier for me, is if the legacy project guys meet on the side, document it and throw it into the SJRU folder Google Drive that Vora has created. Anything
actually वो रद्री वो मेरा काम रह गया एक्चुअली मैं ये भी बहुत बिजी रहा हूँ मैं कल परसों में डालने वाला हूँ लास्ट वीक we had a very fruitful meeting ना legacy project का
Right. No. That's okay, Sanjeet. Basically, the thing is, at some point, I want to be able to put all this together and make some instruction manual out of it, and that's the point.
Yes.
And also, we'll create a lot of templates as part of this. like, Vora has created all this alumni database, and there's a method to that madness. There's a scrubbing process he went through, and I think there's a lot of good lessons learned from that. So we should document that. I'm sure Yearbook and everybody will have stuff to talk about. If you can't write it, give me a call. I'll take notes and I'll capture all that. Or one way or the other, just make sure we have a record of things that we're doing. So for posterity's sake, it'll be helpful. That's one. And then the second thing is, I keep reminding people about posting pictures into the photo album, that Google Drive thing. The response rate has been pretty poor. I don't know why people got confused. You can just click on the link from the Signal chat and upload pictures from the phone. And most of the pictures are probably not going to be in the digital form. That's okay. Just take pictures from your actual photos and just upload them to the drive. And for now, my little project was to create a video stream out of it. But then more importantly for Anurag, I think we have to get more pictures than what we have right now. The yearbook will be pretty dry if we don't have pictures going back to our IIT days, right, Anurag?
Yeah. So, but for the yearbook, we'll need better pictures for sure. So what I suggest is there are apps which you can use to take pictures of pictures, which automatically adjust the aspect ratio. And
no, I thought of that as well, but it's just that we won't even get anything in that case. So once we get something, then we can zero in upon the pictures that we really want to keep and go back to them and say, boss, now let's get a better resolution, better version of the picture. Mera wahi tha ki abhi if you ask them to do that now, they won't do any of it. Like, app download karke ye sab kuch bhi nahi karenge. So that's the thing. Let's at least get them out of the woodwork and have them post the pictures in whatever form they can, and we'll go from there. And I'll take it upon myself to gather all those pictures. So I won't make it your thing. One less task for you. So other than that, that's it. I don't have anything else, Vora.
Cool. I think that's all the updates from all the teams, right? So questions, guys. Anybody has questions? I have a question for Anurag first. Anurag, can't we involve IDC folks for the logo?
Right now, I only have Chandru on the group. I've asked him to invite more of his batchmates. We can ask IDC guys, but let there be at least more than one person right now.
Yeah, of course, yes.
But yes, definitely, those guys are very good at all the graphic design and all those kind of stuff. We can definitely let me contact Chandru tomorrow and discuss this with him.
टैगलाइन में थोड़ा छिछोरे वर्ड डाल देते हैं.
For the logo.
Honor to Nitish Tiwari. The छिछोरेs are back from where it started. ऐसा कुछ तो डाल देते हैं.
That's a good idea actually. That's a nice tagline.
हाँ, the छिछोरेs are back from where it started. ऐसा डाल देते हैं.
And
I mean, just
Bindu, you were saying.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, if you want any design resources, I'm happy to donate at least a logo designer for you if you want it. If someone in the batch is going to design, I think that's the best. If not,
we can come up with concepts, but I think it's best to get a commercial.
Okay, fine. Then I can get you a good designer for free.
You'll pay for it.
I mean,
right?
I'll pay for it, but okay.
and that won't be deducted from the actual amount you anyway had planned for the year.
It won't.
Come on, Sanjay. We're talking $1 million में 10-15,000 का क्या बात कर रहे हो?
Right, यार, सही बोला. अरे बाप रे, मामू को फंसा रहे हैं. मामू कहाँ गया?
Hey, by the way, Anurag, when it comes down to it, I won't claim myself to be a lit type, whatever that is, but I'm happy to help with the copywriting and all that stuff.
We'll need as much help as possible. So even non-lit types will have to start volunteering.
Don't ask me to write in Hindi, boss. वो मेरा बस का बात नहीं है. I barely can speak. So just so long as it's not in Hindi.
Make it all work.
Yeah, but I think बोलना इसलिए पड़ता है because that's how the mail was so sensitive. अगर मैं लिखता वो mail तो उसमें आधा गाली होता.
आदत से मजबूर ना.
But that is original, boss. Original with a W.
Guys, we need to, I was waiting just for this meeting to start, but I think tomorrow or at least from Monday, we should kick off everything because it'll take longer than we estimate it would take. Collecting people, just getting people to respond is going to be a challenge.
Right. And I think in India ये कोविड के कारण पता नहीं किसके साथ क्या क्या प्रॉब्लम चल रहे हैं, वो और भी थोड़ा डिले हो जाएगा ये सब चीजों में. वी कांट एक्सपेक्ट इमीडिएट रिस्पॉन्सेज आल्सो यार, पता नहीं कौन किसमें फंसा हुआ है.
But I think for profiles and all, Anurag, we should first need to finalize what we need information for everybody before we send it out to them, right? So I think once you identify these are all the things we need, then you send it out in one shot. Yeah.
By the way, with what's going on right now, how much of a break do we have to give? Like, we don't want to sound overly, we don't want to seem insensitive to what's going on. So थोड़ा ये pushing pulling break लेना है क्या, कि is it okay to keep going with what we're doing? No, with what's going on
तो
with
नहीं
COVID.
कर रहे, इतना हार्ड हम कर ही नहीं रहे हैं अभी तक तो. आई थिंक सो इतना हार्ड पुशिंग पुलिंग कहाँ हो रहा है कुछ.
ठीक है.
Yeah, I think that would be the sticking point for fundraising, but just for
Fundraising won't start until July. I think all the work for at least for fundraising and legacy project is a lot of prep work, right? I think so. I think.
I guess when we start really calling people, that time we don't know. मतलब maybe whoever calls, थोड़ा ये हमको प्रोटोकॉल रखना पड़ेगा कि first try to assess कि वो किस situation में है जिसको भी हम कॉल कर रहे हैं.
I think the outreach team and whatever we can do offline work, we will do to get maximum number of emails. But I think cold calling probably needs to begin a little bit later. Right now, it's kind of
हाँ वही ठीक है.
Yep.
तो
No, but that is अभी तक it's great progress so far. I think as compared to what the other batches I've seen they've done. And also for the benefit, I think a lot of volunteers are here, but for the benefit of others, the volunteers are meeting every 2 weeks as a group, and then different teams are meeting at different times. And as Shivalkar has already said, we need more help in outreach. We got 250 plus, and we have a record of 850 people. So a lot of room to grow.
I have personally tried to get, at least I've sent out messages to around 20-25 people, but some people just are not interested. That's the harsh truth, Vinay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we can assume about 20% not joining, about 20% being not interested for one reason or the other. My guess. So
I think it may be higher than that based on my experience so far.
IIT was not a fun place, right? Some of us.
Shivalkar, a lot of people were scared, man.
Shivalkar was a big reason it was not a fun place for a lot of people.
There's a Netflix movie called Alma Matters, which is coming out, which says that IT is not a fun place, I think.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Is Shivalkar acting in it?
Is it based
on his story. वो शिवालकर की story पे होगा.
Is that an Indian production or what is it based on?
It's an Indian production. It looks like a documentary of sorts.
Yeah, Kharagpur or Kanpur, I think one of those two places.
Yeah.
I saw the trailer recently.
नहीं लेकिन वो recent times का है. 90s वाला IIT नहीं शो किया इसमें. अभी का शो किया है ना उसमें.
हाँ अभी का है. Yes.
तो ठीक है ना. फिर ठीक है वो. फिर सच भी है वो फिर. अभी वाला सच भी है.
All right, guys. I will stop the recording for now. I think we are still generally chatting.
हाँ चलेगा.